Good afternoon, Louisiana. Welcome to the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing, your host, along with Spencer, the fantasy guru Urquhart, here to help you prepare for your fantasy football season. Back for a second week of the new year of the Fantasy Roundup. And Spencer, we got football drafts all over the place. I know I've got a league with a draft this week. Some people have already drafted or had their auction. And we're going to kind of take you through week by week. Last week we did position ranks. Today we've got some overall ranks for you. Might do some auction values at some point, and late round sleepers, and just kind of focus on something new every single week. We've also got a little baseball to talk about in the fantasy world today with the trade deadline. The Nationals trading Juan Soto to the San Diego Padres. How does that affect his value? Josh Bell also goes to the Padres. We had a closer swap in Milwaukee and San Diego, so those guys will have different values, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. First of all, as always, we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. You can go to nola.com/Caesars and get their best offer today for new signups. Your first bet, risk-free up to $1,500. You can bet it on just about anything. It has to be, I think, minus 300 odds or worse. You can't just go bet it on a huge favorite. But other than that, if you lose, you get your money back and you get to try again. So go to nola.com/Caesars and figure that out today. Where are you at in your fantasy prep, Spencer? I know you work all off season at this stuff, getting your rankings together and everything. Now, I assume you've probably had a draft already or are getting ready for one.
Oh, yeah. I had my first big redraft last week, the Instagram Experts League, which was a super flex. So it had some interesting twists and turns in there. My first two picks were Kyler Murray and Dalvin Cook. Really pleased with that, considering how far Cook fell. I had pick 11 and got Cook in the second round. I was really surprised he fell that far. I know he's kind of injury prone, but yeah, as far as my preparation, I'm pretty deep into it. Where I've got all my rankings set, and just now it's tweaking them. It's like this. I tweak them every few days and check the news, check the stock report. See, like today I saw Irv Smith having thumb surgery. Gonna have to move him down a few spots. Unfortunately, he's a guy that, again, he's just always hurt. So those kind of guys just got to be mindful of and just track the news and see who's trending up and trending down at this point. Because I feel like the ranks are the foundation of the ranks are pretty set in stone now that we're in the August.
Absolutely, and we will have a segment later on of who is trending up and trending down throughout the first week or so of training camps around the NFL. And as we go forward through August and even into the season, it may be worth like a headline section. We'll talk about the biggest news of the week and how that affects the fantasy football world. So let's get into some of those rankings. You say you're still tweaking them, and I like that you mentioned Superflex too, because boy, is it a different world. I'm in a Superflex league too. I love Superflex. It's probably my favorite way to play. Because it makes the quarterback so important, and you've just got to get the quarterback right in those leagues. And in other leagues, as we know, fantasy football quarterbacks not all that important, and we're about to see that here. Let's take a look at your standard rankings. This is your overall standard fantasy football rankings for the new season, and let's take a look. You did top 25 at how long it takes to get to a quarterback as we go through the rest of it. You're going to start with running backs. That's very traditional. And I was a little surprised, Spencer, you don't have any wide receivers even in the top 6. So you're saying if you're in a standard league, have a pick anywhere in the first half of that first round, you're taking a running back.
Yeah, definitely, because in the single quarterback leagues, running backs are the most scarce position, being that you have to start 2 of them. So yeah, I would, as much as I love Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Jamar Chase, I can't put them up with those elite running backs because it's just more scarcity there. Where at the receiver position, it's like if you take a Justin Jefferson there instead of a Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook, yeah, it's probably a little bit safer pick, but it's going to be one of those deals probably where your running back situation is going to be rough because of pretty much everybody else in the back half of the draft is going to probably take at least one running back, to where your first running back's probably going to be like, could end up being a risky play like Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley. Somebody, yeah, they could be an elite RB1, but they could also bust and you end up really weak at that position. So I prefer, I'm more traditional in that sense. I like to take, if I have one of those top 6 picks, I tend to still go with the running back. I know some people have switched to the receivers, but there's just too much depth at the receiver position. I mean, you could get a guy later like Rashad Bateman, a younger up-and-comer, Gabriel Davis, or even a veteran bounce-back candidate like Michael Thomas. So all those guys have upside, where the running backs in that range are just kind of blah, like Chase Edmonds, Damian Harris. Those guys aren't going to come anywhere close to being a top 5 running back.
We talked last week about the zero RB strategy or the hero RB strategy. And obviously, if you want to go zero RB and you're just going to fill up your roster with basically backup running backs with the thinking that eventually some of the starters will get hurt and you'll be in a good position, then I think if you're going zero RB, you do take a wide receiver in the first round, right? But if you're going hero RB, meaning you're just going to get one stud running back and then go scour the last half of the draft for backups, then you probably do need to get your stud in this first round.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not totally opposed to hero RB. I am totally opposed to zero RB. I mean, zero RB is just crazy. I know some people do it, but I've never once done it in a competitive money league. I mean, it's just silly. I mean, just throwing your money away. Like, where the hero RB, I actually feel like that's pretty savvy, because if you get that elite running back and they hit, you could probably fill that RB2 spot with somebody off of waivers or one of your late picks. I mean, one of those backups probably could emerge to at least being startable. So, yeah, I'm not at all opposed to hero RB, because then you can stack up the receivers and have an elite receiving core as well as that elite running back. Just got to hope that the hero stays healthy, because if not, it could be dangerous. But if you do the handcuff with them, you know, if Dalvin Cook's your hero RB and you handcuff Alexander Madison, then you're pretty well covered there. So just if you do hero RB, make sure to handcuff the hero.
Yeah, and I mean that's really what it is. Is if you're going to do either of those strategies, zero RB does not mean don't draft any running backs. It means don't draft any running backs at the front half of the draft, and then get a whole bunch of handcuffs at the back half or flyers. And you just have to, the odds say that a couple of them will work out. And by the end of the season, you will have 2 starting caliber running backs. So that's the strategy. That's the interesting part of this first half. Now let's look at page 2, where we kind of have, if it's a 12-team league, you're back half of the first round, first half of the second round. And here's where we start to see more receivers and even a tight end in there. Still no quarterback, though.
Right, yeah, Travis Kelce sneaks in there, and then a lot of receivers in this range there, Diggs, Adams, CD. You know, Nick Chubb and Javonte Williams are interesting, because you could make a case that they could be first-round picks, but I feel like their upside is both of their upsides are somewhat capped, because they're in committee backfields. Or, you know, Nick Chubb's got Kareem Hunt there, and Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon there kind of limits their upside, but they still are strong enough performers to where I feel like they're solid second round picks. But yeah, if I get my, you know, if I could get like, you know, a Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon type DeAndre Swift with a later first round pick, I'm more than likely going with a receiver in the second round rather than pulling up Chubb or Javonte, because with those receivers, they're like Diggs, Adams, CD. I mean, that's just money in the bank. And you could also get it with upside for more, because I mean, they get so many targets to where like their target floor is very secure, like the 150 target range. And then if they can get 8 or 10 touchdowns or more, even Devonte Adams sometimes gets 12 to 15. I mean, that's like, I know I was saying a lot of times the running backs or the receivers can't touch the elite running backs, but Devonte Adams in his prime is not too far behind.
Yeah, and I think I would draft Devonte Adams higher than that. I would consider him late first round if it were me. Moving on to page 3, this is the last of your top 25, and there it is. No quarterbacks in the top 25. So this is 2 full rounds plus 1 in a 12-man draft, 2.5 rounds in a 10-team draft, and no QBs.
Yeah, I'm not considering one until the middle of the third round, and that would be Josh Allen because of the rushing ability. But yeah, even as much of a beast as Josh Allen is, I'm not touching him in the first 2 rounds, because if you take a quarterback that high, you're really sacrificing getting one of these elite players in this range. And there's a drop off after a lot of these guys. So like, you know, there's a drop off after Mark Andrews at tight end, where then you're going to, you know, if you pass on Andrews and take a quarterback, I mean, there's a lot more value to be had late with quarterbacks as opposed to tight ends. I mean, I'd rather wait to the 8th round and get Tom Brady as my quarterback as opposed to Dallas Goedert as my tight end. That's why I prefer. And then same thing with like Aaron Jones. I'd rather have Aaron Jones as my second running back as opposed to taking Josh Allen and then getting Tony Pollard or some committee back as my second running back. And the same goes with receivers. There's just more value to be had with these skill guys, where with the quarterbacks, it's a sucker's bet, in my opinion, to take one that high. Because if the only way it'll pay off would be if they outscore all the other quarterbacks by like 5 to 10 fantasy points a game. And while Josh Allen is the top guy, he's not that much better than the rest of the pack.
Very interesting, too. We will talk about risers and fallers in training camp. And we see Alvin Kamara pop into your list there at number 24. He was not there last week, but with news of his court date in Las Vegas being pushed back 2 months, looking more and more likely like he will not be suspended this season, that any suspension would come after this season because, listen, court cases take months. And if this one's not even starting until the beginning of October, or maybe it's the end of September, you're looking at a long drawn-out process, and the season will likely be over before the NFL would hand out any punishment for Kamara. I still say if you could get him at number 24, if you know he's not going to be suspended, that's a pretty good bargain for AK.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just the only concern would be if if the commissioner's exempt list would come into play, if at some point the surveillance video would get leaked out to where then people would get outraged, and then it would kind of force Goodell's hand. So I'm still not that's why I didn't move him up too much. I moved him up some because there is a chance he gets, out of it scot-free as far as this season. And I mean, in redraft leagues, that's all you need to where he could end up being a steal there in like the late second, early third round. It's one of those things though, like if you take him there and then he would get popped with a suspension, that's a huge hit because then that's one of your key players that you're counting on at a scarce position. Then you go from having that elite production to boom, nothing. So it's like he does get a stock up, not denying that, but it's still one of those things that I'm not 100% sold that he's gonna get out of it with no suspension.
And listen, the other thing about Kamara is he's had some injury problems the last couple of years, some soft tissue stuff, and that kind of stuff, as we've seen with Christian McCaffrey and Julio Jones, another good example. It tends to just kind of pop up. The older a player gets, the more he has trouble with that stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately. And then I think last year he had the knee concerns. He's had some knee problems as well. And that's soft tissues and knees. Those are the detriment downfall type injuries to most running backs, especially the knees. So in a way, I was kind of hoping Kamara would get suspended early to where then later in the year he'd be in midseason form. But he's definitely gonna be out there week 1. So if anything, it might be one of those deals where if you draft him, maybe try trading him after the first month or so, to where then you won't have to worry in case he gets suspended.
Yeah, and it's a risk, but there are almost every single one of these guys, even Jonathan Taylor at number 1, running backs get hurt. They do. And so, and not that other positions don't, but running backs do more than any other skill position. And so you're taking a running back early. Like you said earlier, you got to handcuff him. You got to keep your fingers crossed that he stays healthy, or that any injuries he has are more of the short-term variety. On the other hand, if you are in a superflex league, and this is where we just went through your traditional standard rankings, no quarterbacks in the top 25. For those who are in a superflex league for the first time or are curious about it, don't know how it works, check out Spencer's superflex rankings. Whoops, that's the wrong one. I'm going to get those.
Do you like Trey Lance for superflex?
I will get the superflex rankings up. In the meantime, though, obviously in a superflex situation, you've got to here we go. You've got to take quarterbacks because you need to, pretty much you're always going to put a quarterback in that superflex spot anytime you have one available, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the good thing with superflex is you're not forced to take one, which is why a second one. I mean, which is why Jonathan Taylor's still in the top 4. If this was 2 quarterback, I mean, hell, I'd probably have the whole top 10 be quarterbacks because then you're literally forced to start 2. But at least with superflex, it's a little more flexible to where if you have really bad luck with injuries. But I'm still, if I get a top 3 pick, I'm still going quarterback Because to me, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes give you a significant positional advantage, especially considering all 32 starters are going to get picked. So it's like if you wait too long, you might get stuck with Mac Jones and Drew Lock as your two quarterbacks. And if that's the case, you're not winning the league. I don't care how good your skill players are. If those are your quarterbacks, you're going to be up against it, because it's like you need to be in super flex, because that super flex spot is flexible to where you can put a skill player there if needed, but you need to make sure to get at least one top 12 quarterback, one consistent quarterback you can fit in that, the one spot where you have to start a quarterback. The super flex spot, I kind of play it as the draft goes. If someone falls into my lap like a Trey Lance.
I think we might have lost Spencer there. Spencer, you with us? And Spencer froze up. But yeah, I mean, what he's saying is absolutely correct. You've got to get the quarterback early. If not the first round, then for sure in the second or third round.
Am I back now?
Yep, I think you're back. There he is.
Cool. All right, yeah, my bad. Yeah, well, the internet's bad. I can't. No,
you seem to have more and more problems with that.
Yeah, it's crazy. But let's see. Yeah, I'll say about the Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence thing about the super flex strategy. If a guy like that falls to you in the middle rounds, or even like Tua Tagovailoa, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, like one of the higher end QB2s, by all means take them. But if there's a big run on those guys to where you could get like an AJ Brown there instead, like I'd go ahead and do that, and then try to piece together like a few later ones, like Davis Mills, Mitch Trubisky, Daniel Jones. Like get a couple of those or three of those in there, and then out of the three of them, you could just play the matchups for that super flex spot, and then you have your elite QB1 already locked in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take at least two, right? In a traditional league, you can get away with one quarterback and then make a waiver pickup on a bye week or whatever. You've got to have at least two, because number one, quarterbacks are typically going to outscore anybody else you'd have in the flex spot. And number two, if your starter gets hurt, all 32 starting quarterbacks will get taken in a super flex draft. And that's the danger.
I'm taking at least three. Heck, in the Instagram experts, I took four. I took Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky, and Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, now if you're going to take if you're going to take three, you better do it somewhat early, because if you do the math in a 12-team league times three quarterbacks, that's 36 quarterbacks. So if you want a starter, you're going to have to take your third relatively early. Otherwise, you'll end up, Jimmy G is a good example. Maybe a guy who isn't starting right now, but, has a chance to later on in the year. Or Kenny Pickett. Maybe he's not starting right away in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he got
by
picked.
The end of the year, he will be. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think you do need three. You certainly need at least two. And that's why you take one. You take one early, and you piece together the rest of your roster the best you can. But you say, Spencer, that you would be okay not necessarily using that super flex spot on a quarterback.
I mean, it would just be if the draft got out of hand where they had a bunch of quarterbacks go way high. But 9 times out of 10, I'm getting a quarterback in that spot, because I feel like especially if it's 6 points for a passing touchdown, I'm for sure grabbing a QB there. If it's only 4 points, though, I guess if the draft gets, like I said, if it gets too out of hand, I could maybe see putting a receiver in there some weeks, but it would be one of those to where I would be kind of aggravated, because I feel like this draft did not flow my way, and I'm gonna end up stuck with Daniel Jones as my QB2. Yeah, you know what? I ain't messing with that. I'll take the receiver, but I don't know. Hopefully if y'all are, just stay, it usually won't fall to you at value. Like, for example, Justin Fields. I'm not a huge Justin Fields advocate, being that the Bears stink, but his rushing abilities unquestioned. I mean, he's got elite rushing ability for a quarterback, to where I felt like he fell to me at a pretty good value there. And it was like the 8th rounder, so had a pretty good core of skill players. So, and already had Kyler Murray locked in, so didn't reach on him. Got him at a good price, and was able to build up the rest of my starting lineup.
And that rushing value for a quarterback, what it does is it raises his floor. Where Justin Fields, even if he has a week where he struggles, he might pick up 30, 40 rushing yards. And at least he's not going to be a disaster. Even if he throws for only 100 yards and no touchdowns, you have those 40 rushing yards, maybe a touchdown every now and then. And at least he's not a total anchor on your lineup, even in a bad week. So I like that too. Training camp started around the league. July 19th, I think, was the first day. The Raiders, who play in the Hall of Fame game on Thursday, they were the first ones to open up. Everybody was open by last Tuesday, July the 26th. Most of the teams started that day, including the Saints. As you look at training camp reports, your mind's constantly in fantasy mode. What does that mean for this guy? What does that mean for his value? Do I like him better than the consensus? Is the consensus going to go up? What is your method, Spencer, for checking out training camp headlines, and as we get into it, preseason headlines, and saying, this is what I'm looking for?
Yeah, it's all about kind of deciphering what's going to truly affect value as far as like positional battles. I tend to put more stock into, as opposed to, oh, so and so looks so good in practice. Like, I tend to those reports, I kind of just like tend to throw them out unless it's somebody that's like kind of unexpected, but if it's somebody that we already know is talented, like Chris Olave, for example, it's like I already know Chris Olave is really talented. A lot of analysts are just waking up to that. But it's like, man, I've had Chris Olave in my top 30 receivers since freaking June. Like, it's just so that stuff, it's like I've kind of ahead of the game with that. But there are a few things, that you just don't really know with these position battles, like the Jimmy G, Trey Lance thing, for example. In the summer, it was kind of up in the air who would start, where now at camp started, it's pretty clear that Trey Lance is running with the ones. He's going to be the guy, and that Jimmy G's going to be on his way out. And then, for example, the suspension news too, like Deshaun Watson got him and Trey Lance as the two quarterbacks trending up, because now Deshaun Watson's, they ruled it 6 games, might get a few more, but it's pretty clear now that he's not going to get the season-long suspension that many were anticipating. So now you got to consider drafting him as in the later rounds, because the fact is, whether you like him or not, when he's on the field, he's a strong fantasy producer.
Yeah, absolutely. We see some other names here too. Allen Robinson is a guy who's on a new team, but he's been getting a lot of raves from Rams camp. And now he's got a good quarterback. He had Justin Fields, Andy Dalton, cast of characters the last few years. Now he's got Matthew Stafford throwing to him. Michael Thomas, we talked about a lot. These guys, it really is availability, if you think about it. Who's winning a starting position? Which injured guys look like they're back healthy, and which guys are going to avoid a suspension, like Alvin Kamara or Deshaun Watson, avoid a suspension or get a shorter one than previously anticipated.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, with Michael Thomas, I was concerned about Michael Thomas. I was like, when is he going to return to practice? I was like, I'm not drafting him until he returns to practice. And now that he's returned, I feel a lot better. But I'm still not going to draft him way up high like some analysts are doing. But I feel pretty good now about taking him as a mid-round, like WR3 kind of option. Like, where before I was like, I'm just not going to draft him unless he'd fall to like the 10th round, because he's got to show me that he can go out there and cut and run routes and all that. But now that he's back doing that, it's just, it's sometimes you got to see it to believe it. Now that we're seeing it, it's his stock's definitely on the rise.
Yeah, we said it last week. Do not draft Michael Thomas until you see him in action. Well, now we've seen him in action. And so things change quickly in a week. Our good friend Jerry is here. How you doing, Jerry? He says the Saints are firing on all cylinders after week 1 of practice. It's always a good thing. You want it more after week 1 of the regular season, but we shall see. So far, so good out of Metairie for the Saints camp. Here are some guys, however, for which training camp maybe not going quite as well as you anticipated, Spencer.
Right. Yeah, not a whole lot of bad news so far with training camp, but the injuries are starting to pile up. I had one recently that they could add on there. Tim Patrick, he fell on his leg after making a diving catch today. They're not sure of the severity, but they're concerned that it could be bad since he was carted off. So, a lot of receivers having bad breaks. Van Jefferson likely going under the knife with knee surgery. He's probably going to miss the first few weeks. Michael Gallup, coming off a torn ACL, already said himself that he's probably going to miss the first month. Christian Watson, the rookie on the PUP list, not good at all for him. because as a rookie, you want to get all the reps you can get with Aaron Rodgers. And if he's not on the practice field, he's probably not going to do much until the midpoint of the regular season. Chase Claypool, another one who's banged up again, always seems to be hurt. He's talented, but just can't seem to stay healthy. J.K. Dobbins, kind of like Gallo coming off an ACL, and his was worse. He had like an MCL and other ligament damage to where it's uncertain if he'll be back. And then, Antonio Gibson was on there too. He's another one. Like Claypool, it's like he's talented, but just always banged up. There's certain players that it's just, Irv Smith, another one, got hurt today. Some guys just can't seem to stay healthy, unfortunately.
Yep, no doubt about it. Injuries are the biggest thing, but you're also looking at opportunity. And it's hard. Finding the guys to fade in training camp if it's not injury can be hard because no coach, no teammate wants to give a negative scouting report on one of their own guys. And so you're always going to hear that this guy, so-and-so is in the best shape of his life. That's an old spring training joke, but it works in NFL training camps too. Best shape of his life. Boy, he knows the playbook so much better than last year. We really want to work him into the offense this year. You're going to hear all of that stuff. Some of it may be true. Some of it may not be. What you're not going to hear is, boy, it seems like he just doesn't know the playbook at all this year. No one is ever going to say that, right? So you have to kind of comb through these things, read between the lines just a little bit, and find out exactly what the issue may be. Who was it? I don't think you had him on your list, but there was somebody who they said, he's complaining of lower back problems, and so we're going to have to get him back in shape. And you thought, how could he not have showed up to training camp in shape? It was a wide receiver. I'm completely blanking on who it was at this point. But that's the sort of thing where you're like, there's something funny going on there, and I'm not drafting that guy. So, you read between the lines. I'll see if I can remember exactly who that was. But you are watching the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com. Every Tuesday between now and the NFL season, we will take a look at fantasy football auctions, drafts, rankings, anything you need to know, sleepers to get ready for the season. And then once the season starts, we'll do as we did last year, recap every single week, talk about waiver wire pickups, do some DFS, anything in the fantasy world. This is your home for it. Want to wrap today's show up with a little look at baseball. Of course, the trade deadline today, it's about 2.5 hours. Already had the mega deal. The Washington Nationals trade Juan Soto to the San Diego Padres. They win the Soto sweepstakes, sent over a couple of major leaguers to Washington, including C.J. Abrams, who's their top shortstop prospect, along with a couple of other of their top prospects. So they paid a hefty price. They also get Nationals first baseman Josh Bell in that deal. What is your take on this deal and what it does specifically for the guys who everybody already has owned, Soto and Bell, to their fantasy value?
Yeah, I think it helps them, being able to be on a contender now and a better lineup. I see it, especially for Soto, because Soto is kind of struggling there, only hitting like 240. It's crazy to think the guy that most people consider the best hitter in baseball was hitting like almost 100 points below what most people expect him to hit. And he's a guy he's like a 300 plus hitter. So I definitely think his stats are about to go through the roof there. Now he'll be rejuvenated being on the contending Padres team. Bell should be about steady. His stats I don't think will change much, but Soto's I think are about to spike.
Yeah, I like what you said about the lineup, because if you're imagining Fernando Tatis Jr. is working his way back, he's about ready for a rehab assignment. So give that 2 more weeks, he'll be back in the lineup. You imagine he'll lead off. I would think Soto may hit second, followed by Manny Machado and Josh Bell in that lineup. Man,
that is just...
listen, you got Tatis and Soto getting on base all the time. You know who else is going to be helped by this is Manny Machado. Think about how many RBI opportunities Manny Machado will have in the last couple of months of the season. And so, if I have Manny Machado, I'm happy as well, because, they're going to face some good pitching. They face the Dodgers, I think, 7 more times this year. But they also play some games in Coors Field. In fact, I think they're in Coors Field right now. I don't know. Soto and Bell probably get there tomorrow. But it's a good situation. Any Padre you have in that lineup. A lot of other things going on in the trade world. What you did, Spencer, is took a look at some guys who are owned in less than 50%. In fact, all these guys owned in less than 35% of leagues who could help you make that push for the playoffs down the stretch. If you had a guy get traded, if you have an injury, if you have one of these things. I have Julio Rodriguez in 2 leagues. He's on the IL. So who do you pick up to replace him? Here's some ideas that you came up with.
For sure. Yeah, I think a good Julio replacement, for example, would be Leoti Tavare, a young outfielder for the Rangers. He's got a good power speed combo to him with his skill set, and he's been hitting well. He was a guy who had come up last year and couldn't hit. He was promising because he was athletic, but he's not hitting. Or this year, he's hitting over 300. I know it's a small sample size, but considering he's got power, speed, ability, I think he's worth an add. Jorge Mateo for the Orioles. He's versatile, can play a lot of different positions, and he's a strong stolen base guy, already over 20 stolen bases. So if you need stolen bases for those in roto leagues, go look at Mateo. And then Nolan Gorman, if you're in need of power, he's been seeing more playing time from my Cardinals, and he's a slugger, man. He's not going to give you much in stolen bases, but he'll hit some home runs, man. That dude can. He's got an elite power stroke for a second baseman. And then those that need a catcher, MJ Melendez for the Royals. He's been playing more outfield now that Salvador Perez is back, but he's still got that catcher eligibility and can swing it pretty good in what's normally a graveyard as far as catchers being able to hit. And then pitchers, they got a few names to watch. Brady Singer, another Royal. It's funny that they had 2 Royals on here, but Singer's quietly been a very good pitcher as of late, been striking out batters, working deep in the game. Same thing with young Angels starter Reed Detmers. I know the Angels have kind of fallen by the wayside, but Detmers has really picked up the pace here in the second half and looks like someone you can trust. And then Kyle Finnegan, I know the Nationals has traded everybody away, but I know a lot of leagues, there's very few closers available. And I mean, I know the team stinks, but he is a closer. And games they do win will probably be close. So need some saves, try out Kyle Finnegan.
Yeah, Washington Nationals, as bad as they're going to be talent-wise, are not going to finish the year 0-55. Like they're going to win some of those games. And like you said, they may be close. I'll give you another name just based on today. Jorge Lopez of the Orioles, their relief pitcher, traded to the Brewers, who now I don't know what their situation is. He closer, or excuse me, he traded to the Twins.
The Twins. That's an ugly committee there.
Yeah, an ugly committee there. But what it does do is clear the way in Baltimore for Felix Batista to be the #1 closer. If you haven't seen this guy, filthy stuff. I think it was 55 strikeouts and like 41 innings pitched. He is going to be the closer, and Baltimore's been playing better. And I know they've jettisoned a few parts. Trey Mancini went to the Astros. We talked about Lopez to the Twins. But they're still going to win some games. And Felix Batiste is nasty. He's been working in the 7th and 8th inning. There's a guy who's owned in less than 10% of leagues. If you need saves, I went and got him this morning in one league. Go get Felix Batista. He's bound to pick up some saves over the last 2 months of the season. And he's not – the way he's pitching, he's going to help you in Ks and ERA and WHIP as well.
100%. Yeah, that would just happen, the Lopez deal. So, yeah, he's probably better than Finnegan. It's just tough to – get these guys picked up ASAP because they're going to get picked up quick by people that need saves. If you need saves, get them now.
It changes every single hour. And a new one just comes in. Joey Gallo to the Dodgers. The Yankees finally get rid of Joey Gallo, who's been a disaster in the Bronx. And you wonder if he can pick up any value in a new setting. He had tremendous power when he was in Texas. I wouldn't go run and pick up Joey Gallo right now because, listen, the guy's been striking out every other time up. But keep an eye on him. You want to be first in line. If he does sort of rediscover that stroke, if the Dodgers fix something in his swing, if it's just a situation where he was pressing in New York, it could be a rebirth situation. If he's getting ABs in that Dodger lineup and he starts to pull out of that slump, you want to be ahead of that. Otherwise, somebody else pick him up and beat you with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, kind of like with Max Muncy, kind of in the same boat with the Dodgers. He'll probably end up losing at bats to Gallo because it's like somebody just he hadn't been getting it done, and Gallo wasn't getting it done with the Yankees. So yeah, maybe a change of scenery is what he needs. It's just one of those things. Even if he does get going, he's still gonna kill your batting average. He just sucks as a hitter, man. He's got power, but man, he's one of those like Mendoza line kind of guys.
Yeah, but if you're looking for power, man, if he gets it going,
he has that.
That's for sure. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the Fantasy Roundup. Spencer the Guru and Zach Ewing here with you. We will be back next Tuesday at our new time, 2 o'clock p.m., live on these same social media channels. Of course, you can watch us on demand anytime at bet.nola.com. We're powered by Caesar Sportsbook, and we'll be back Thursday at 4 o'clock for the next episode of Bayou Bets. Spencer and I will be joined by Amanda McElfresh, one of our branded content writers and also an avid sports bettor, and we're going to get her takes on the NFL season to come and a few other things as well. So until then, appreciate you joining us. For Spencer, I'm Zach. Have a good day, everybody.